cognitive disabilities special education teacher, as a career specialist for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and as a person-centered planner. In her current role as advocacy and community engagement manager for the ARC Minnesota, Nora uses her expertise to support people with disabilities and their families, to navigate systems, make informed decisions, and plan for creative and customized solutions. Nora is deeply passionate about disability, justice, equity, and social change movements. I'm going to listen carefully because someday this is what I want to be able to do, is be an advocate like this. So with that, Nora, the floor is yours.
Awesome. All right. Oh, that's mine.
That's yours. I'm not taking yours. That'd be very bad.
Yeah, all my notes. Hi, everyone. My name is Nora Ulseth, and you heard I'm the Advocacy and Community Engagement Manager at the ARC Minnesota, and I'm so happy that all of you are here today. I was actually, I think, scheduled to do a workshop, and there was more interest, and I think that is just incredible that people are wanting to know about person-centered practices. I was having a conversation with Paul before we started around advocacy, and I think just I want to kind of actually clarify advocacy a little bit, or how I view advocacy, because it's changed a lot over the years. In the past, advocacy was kind of almost like a free lawyer that would go on your behalf and represent you. But nowadays, a lot of times advocacy is housed in nonprofits where sometimes they don't have lawyers on staff, and it's people like me who have different backgrounds advocating with, I like to say advocating with people, because a lot of times we are going alongside them, teaching them the information that they need and the skills that they need for a lifelong, basically, advocacy for their children, rather than that on behalf of the person. So just wanted to clarify that. But today we're going to be talking about advocating for your child using person-centered practices. I'm learning how to use this tech. Okay, so access statement is just, please be who you are, do what you need, and take care of yourself. I encourage you to use the space as you need, do what you need to engage with the material. Feel free to leave and come back. Do whatever you need, really. I'm going to share some information about the ARC Minnesota, the organization that I work for. We're going to get into person-centered practices, and then I'm going to share a few additional tips that I typically share with parents who I work with. I also had like a whole thing about myself, but I forgot that they were going to introduce myself. So we will keep on going. So that's the agenda: ARC Minnesota, person-centered practices, and organizational and communication strategies. That's my name. You'll see on the bottom that there is a little person at a podium, and underneath it says CTLC Foundations Presenter, and that's Charting the Life Course Foundations Presenter. So I've gone through a lot of training to present on Charting the Life Course tools, and so I'll be sharing a couple of those with you today. All right. Okay. One thing before I go into information about the ARC Minnesota, you heard a lot about my background and my expertise and my experiences, and I think just one thing I want to note that I had written for my introduction was really, of my years of experiences, it has shown me the importance of person-centered practices in all settings, in all relationships, and in all systems, from the educational system to individuals to healthcare. I think a lot of times issues come up when someone with a disability is being forced into systems norms or system boxes and not being considered as a human, as a person. And so for me, I have seen the creativity, the collaboration, communication, and partnership that can come from doing person-centered practices. Okay, so the ARC Minnesota is an advocacy organization for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our mission is to promote and protect the human rights of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, supporting them and their families in a lifetime of full inclusion and participation in their communities. Our vision is we believe in a world where that welcomes you, a world where all people with IDD are valued, respected, and thriving. Next, I should just hold on to this. I don't need to keep putting it down. Okay, so the ARC Minnesota uses a values framework to guide everything that we do. So when we are creating our work plan, we are making sure that everything is guided by our values. Our values are human and civil rights, self-advocacy and self-direction, equity and belonging, and disability and racial justice. I'm going to do a quick programs overview for all of you. Okay, so the first one is individual advocacy. That's the area that I am in and absolutely am extremely passionate about. So for our advocacy, we do one-to-one support to people with disabilities, parents, professionals, really anyone who contacts the ARC Minnesota, we support them. It can range from just information referral to in-depth coaching and guidance in that individual advocacy piece, even though for me, I feel that, information and referral and that whole spectrum of support really counts under that umbrella of individual advocacy. People have a couple ways to get a hold of us. We have our help desk, which is a phone line, so people can call, ask questions, talk about their situation, if they're struggling, if they need support, information, and referrals, they can just call us. We have an Ask an Advocate submission, which is online. People can ask questions that way. Or people can just call our main line, and they'll get directed to individual advocacy. Community engagement and outreach is statewide. We work with culturally specific communities. We have our regional advisory committees where we work with regional leaders to impact different disability issues. And then they do trainings and events all across Minnesota. Self-advocacy, this is one of our self-advocates. This is Abby. I'm going to read what she says. Abby says, I am proud of being a good advocate and standing up for other people. I am excited about helping others with their own journey and by being a good advocate for other people. I am a self-advocate by respecting others in every way. So I think also that is I really love what Abby says, because anyone can be an advocate. Anyone can advocate for someone else. Anyone can advocate for themselves. It doesn't need to be a professional. So self-advocacy has statewide and regional committees and groups. They have trainings, educational trainings, they have social events, and then they also share information resources with self-advocates through our self-advocacy newsletter, as well as our website, as well as just relationships and those other trainings. We have housing services, so we have our housing access services and crisis housing assistance program. Our housing access services helps people with disabilities find independent housing, whatever that means to them, wherever they're at. And then our crisis housing assistance program helps people with disabilities or with mental health diagnosis pay for rent while they are in inpatient treatment. And this is a picture of Beatrice, someone who is part of our housing access services. Beatrice says, I was drowning before I got in touch with the ARC Minnesota. I would say if you can get in this housing program, do it. It is an amazing program and so smooth. You worked miracles for me. The ARC Minnesota threw me a lifeline. Public policy is a huge part of our advocacy. I would say that's something that is one of the biggest part of the ARC Minnesota's legacy is our public policy. Our public policies team does state and federal policy. They push for system, social change, and system transformation. They do these things called Capital Connectors team, and so they have these teams of people in each district that are working with legislators, pushing for the legislative agenda or on different issues that are impacting the disability community. Next, we have our grants and initiatives team. So this is a large team. As a nonprofit, we really, we rely on grants to expand the programming that we can offer people. And so I'm just going to go through those grants that we have. First is our Regional Quality Council. This is actually the area that I started with at the ARC Minnesota at the Metro Regional Quality Council. I was doing quality assurance interviews for people with disabilities on the quality of their services that they were receiving. So that was another really interesting light into how important person-centeredness was and what would happen when they weren't receiving person-centered services. The next is the Minnesota Inclusion Initiative, and that offers grants to expand or start self-advocacy projects and help with inclusion in Minnesota. The next is the peer-to-peer mentor program. So that pairs people with disabilities who are wanting to move into competitive integrated employment, and they are paired with a peer who has already made that transition to coach them and mentor them through that. And then lastly, the microgrants program is the most popular one, and this one is where people with disabilities can apply for a grant that is helping their employment or housing goals, and the grant awards them money to support that goal. So that one is very, very popular. All right, I am going to take a sip of water before I get going for the next part. 1 second. Gonna keep this down here. Okay. Now we're into the part that we're here for. So person-centered practices. Like I said, typically I do this in a workshop, and I'm so happy that we're all together. I do like when people are able to practice the tools in a workshop, just so that when they go out into the world, they've already tried it a little bit. We don't have as much time today or the tools to do that, so we are gonna do a little bit of reflecting and sharing with your table. Just one time. I'm not gonna make you do it for all the tools, but just so that you can get a sense of the tools and kind of get in that mindset of before leaving and going home and trying them on your own. So person-centered practices are crucial to supporting people. Period. Not only people with disabilities, but all people. We're all different. We all need different things. And so making sure that people are getting those things is important to the quality of life. Person-centered practices respect individual preferences and needs, increase self-determination and independence, and improve a person's quality of life by outlining how to provide customized support. And lastly, they increase collaboration, communication, and partnership. And that's really what we're gonna be using the tools today to really get into that piece of identifying your child's strengths, support needs, and documenting those so that you are able as a parent to advocate for your child and communicate those with others. Okay. People with disabilities and parents come to the ARC Minnesota advocating for many different reasons, more opportunity, more growth, more access, whatever the reason it is, whatever they're needing, their child is in the center of that. And so for me, my job is really getting them the tools so that they are able to communicate what's important to their child and them as a family to make sure that their advocacy is helpful for them in the long run. When I first started at the ARC Minnesota, I actually attended a 2-day person-centered thinking training. That was the first thing that they had me do, was the person-centered thinking training to really get me in that mindset. And I think one thing I'm passionate about is I get a lot of opportunities as a professional to get training, to learn new resources and knowledge and these different tools, and I'm passionate about passing those on to parents and people with disabilities so that they have them as well. So it's not in the hands of professionals, and that it really can balance those scales, because I think a lot of times having that power imbalance can be actually pretty disempowering and a kind of a scary experience to only have one person be the holder of that knowledge. So really, my advocacy is using person-centeredness, using person-centered tools to share with parents so that they can go forth. Okay, you might have heard, actually, I'm not gonna assume, you might have heard different terms, person-centered practices, person-centered thinking, person-centered planning, and person-centered tools. So I am gonna go over that terminology a little bit today, just because they're all together, but they all have some different purposes. Okay. So person-centered practices is the umbrella term. It's holistic. It's the philosophy as well as strategies that can go from the individual to organizational and system-wide. The strategies are rooted in respect, empowerment, and individuality. And the hope with person-centered practices is that it is embedded in almost anything we do. In Minnesota, part of the Olmstead Act is very person-centered. If you're familiar with that, that every level people are providing person-centered services to the Department of Human Services, things like that. Person-centered thinking is the mindset and ways we think about people with disabilities. The mindset is anti-ableist, it's culturally responsive, it's strength-based, and sees people with disabilities as whole and autonomous people. Person-centered planning, I could talk about this forever because this is the area that I used to work in, but is a formal process that typically you ask your case manager for or to work with a provider. So it's formal, it is facilitated by a person-centered planner, and it involves a team. Your team of people, either you, family, your child, things like that, and so that it's a collaborative effort. Typically, the one thing that I want to add a little bit more about person-centered planning is that you work with the individual with disabilities to identify what their hopes and dreams, their strengths, their goals are, and then you work together with the team to make a plan forward to identify with those goals in mind and what the support needs that have been identified. And you're including everyone's perspective. I think that's what makes it so powerful, is that it's not just one person, it's an entire team coming behind the person in the center, which is typically the person with the disability, coming together, investing in that person's future, and moving forward together. I have seen that really helpful when there's contention in a team and people are stuck and they need a third party to facilitate. What are we going to do? How are we going to move forward? I've seen it really helpful when someone's going through a transition, employment, maybe they're leaving high school. What does that look like? Or even just like, is this person living their best life? Do we need to come together as a team to make sure that they're living their best life? There's a few myths about person-centered planning. One myth that I've heard people is that someone needs to use words to communicate, to engage with person-centered planning. But when I was doing person-centered planning and the person in the center didn't use words to communicate, I would rely on whatever type of communication they used, as well as the people in their life, the people who know them, to really advocate and share what their hopes, their strengths, their goals, things like that, to make a plan. The other myth is that because it's strength-based, sometimes people think it's strength-based, you're not going to look at challenges, or it's only going to be kind of like this positive thing. But with person-centered planning, what we actually use is this improvising technique called yes and, so that we don't get bogged down in challenges. We actually try to come together to come up with a plan to address them. Okay, actually, one more thing about person-centered planning. My favorite part, because I also really love doing art, is the cool thing about person-centered planning is it's a person-centered facilitator as well as a graphic facilitator. So all the meetings, everything is visually represented on a map. And so someone who doesn't use words to communicate can also see all the images of what they want in their life. So it's a really incredible, I think, experience for people. If you're not from Minnesota, in Minnesota, our waivers can cover person-centered planning. If you're not in Minnesota, I recommend talking, if you work with a case manager or your state, to ask if they have person-centered planning services, just because it can be really, really meaningful, especially if you're inviting people in to support your child. Person-centered tools are the instruments that are used for person-centered thinking, planning, and the practices. It helps with communication, collaboration, and problem solving. And we're going to go over some person-centered tools for advocating today. So if you want to take notes, I will share as I go, but I'm using the tools from Charting the Life course, and then the person-centered planning really came around, or person-centered tools came around deinstitutionalization time. So really, as people were moving out of institutions, people were working with them to identify, well, what are their goals? Where do they want to be living? What do they want to be doing? And so there's, different thinkers behind these tools. And there's a website, Helen Sanderson, where I find all these tools. You can get templates and stuff. Okay, I'm going to take a sip of water, and then we're going to get into it. Okay, Charting the Life course, that's right. This does this thing. That's kind of cool, though. It grows. Okay, so the first couple tools I'm going to share with you, like I said, are from Charting the Life course. Charting the Life course was developed by the Institute for Human Development at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. The framework and tools are driven by the core belief that all people have the right to live, love, work, play, and pursue their life aspirations, driven by the quest to answer the question, what do families need to know to support their family members with a disability across the lifespan? So they use this visual. You see there's different life stages at the bottom. They have the arrow for their trajectory, and they have their framework as well as their different domains all in their symbol for Charting the Life course. Okay. So when I'm working with a family or with parents, I always start with the trajectory. I think I've noticed that for all of us, it's easy to live in crisis mode, constantly problem solving, and wanting just to do what's best. And for me, my job is really helping people move from a place of reaction and survival. Honestly, people are surviving to response and intentional planning. And I think the trajectory really helps with that. You'll notice on this, so the Charting Life course is really, their whole thing is around this trajectory, and that throughout different life stages, people have important experiences that lead them to a good life. And so you'll notice on the screen here, there's these different circles with different life stages, and on there's different life experiences with an arrow moving up to that life, a good life. And so really wanting to understand how can we make sure that we're having experiences that are leading to a good life. The other reason that I start with this tool when people come to me for advocacy is I think it's hard to know what we're advocating for if we don't know really where we're going. Like, what's the big picture? What is someone passionate about? It's important to take a pause and reflect on that before going into like action mode. And so this is the one I always start with. So this is what the Charting the Life course trajectory looks like. You'll notice that on the top right, it's vision for what I want, and below that is what I don't want. There is a line that's leading to the vision of what you want, and then a dotted line to what you don't want. With this trajectory, there's also two different boxes on either side of the line, so you can put things that you're currently doing that are leading to the life that you want, and possibly things in the box below it, things that maybe you want to avoid that could lead to a life that you don't want. So this is going to be, again, I only make everyone do this once, but we are going to just a little bit of reflection and sharing. So I'd love for all of you to think about what is your vision for a good life. You could think about your life. I do think it's kind of helpful to think about your own life before doing this tool for your child, just to get that practice. So if you want to think about your life, what is your vision for a good life? And I have my little timer here, so we'll just take a little bit of time, just reflect to yourself, 15 seconds, what is your vision for a good life? Okay, now that I've given you a really short time to reflect, if you want to turn to your neighbor if you want to share with your table like one or two things in what's in your vision of a good life. I'd love to hear noise. I'd love to hear the chatter. All right, if you want to wrap up your conversations, we're going to come back together. All right, we're going to reflect again. We'll come back together. I know that's a really brief share, and I so appreciate all the conversation. That's wonderful, honestly. We're going to go into the next part of the trajectory, which is thinking about what you don't want in your life. And so just take a little bit of time to reflect, or maybe you don't even need to and you want to just go straight to talking. But we're just going to practice this. What is it that you don't want in your life? Okay, we're going to reflect just for like a few seconds and then do a share. And go ahead and share if you haven't already started. All right, if you want to wrap up your conversation, we'll come back together. All right, thank you so much for participating, everyone. With person-centered thinking tools, I do find it really helpful just to like get in that mindset, get in the groove before I send you off on your own to do them. So a lot of us have, I imagine, similar things that we want. A lot of people want friends, family, maybe enough money, just enough money to be comfortable, vacations, faith, health. And a lot of times people don't want the same thing. So isolation, poverty, illness, things like that. So I think it's really helpful for people to reflect and just get a larger sense of what it is that they want in their life. Because what can happen is sometimes when we get into crisis or survival mode or even just life, it can be easy just to like jump on and keep on going rather than stopping and reflecting, is this getting me to the life that I want, or is it moving me away from that? And why I typically do this first with parents when I'm supporting them with advocacy is just because that's actually the reflection we do. Do we need to be advocating for a shift? Do we need to be changing directions? Do we need to be trying something different because maybe the services that are in place right now, or the goals that are in place right now, or the supports are actually leading to the life that you don't want? So it's really helpful to just reflect on that. One thing I want to say about this tool is that you can use it for a lot of things. You can use it for just like, what's my vision for a good life? But a lot of times with advocacy, I actually use this tool for specific life events as well as like certain domain areas in their life. So around housing or even support. So what is a vision of good support? What is it you don't want in a support staff? Or what's a vision for good housing? What is it you don't want in housing, right? So you can really like zoom in, you can do large general picture, which I think is a good place to start, and then zoom in into different areas of your life. The next one that I'm going to be talking about is Trying to Life Course Integrated Support Star. This one I use for advocating with parents a lot when they're wondering like what's out there, or they're struggling. They're feeling like I don't have enough supports in place. I don't know what I have access to. And so Charting the Life Course noticed that a lot of times supports were actually like separating people from their family and friends and community. And so the point of the integrated support star is to think holistically about how someone gets support. And when someone fills this out, you can see when there's gaps or possibly when there's an imbalance. Maybe there's one section that's full and the others are not. And so for me, I really think it's important to do this tool with parents because for a lot of times people are advocating for, like I said in the beginning, more access, more quality, more opportunities. And a lot of times people don't know what's out there. There are a lot of things out there, but unless you are maybe in that field or are on a newsletter, unless you're in the know, it's hard to know what's out there. And so I find this tool really helpful to help people kind of think through what's available to them. I just want to check my time and keep on track. Okay, so there's 5 different sections in the integrated support star, and because this is a person-centered tool, the first thing they start with is personal strengths and assets for your child. So what are their strengths, what are their assets, and what are their skills, what are their experiences, and so really thinking about how does that lend itself to maybe the situation, maybe you're looking at employment supports, things like that. The next is relationships. Who's in the person's life? Who's in your child's life? Sometimes or at least I'll speak again just from the experience that I'm working with families. I talk to a lot of parents who are really isolated, and this box sometimes it can be empty, and it can be like very few people. And I think for me, it's really important for people to have really robust supports in all these different sections. And so when we think about support, how are relationships fitting into that? So it could be family, it could be friends, and even acquaintances, even if it's neighbors, even if it's people who you see at a coffee shop every week, right? There are people who are still like in our ecosystem in a way. Eligibility supports are going to be specific to someone's eligibility. So supports received based on diagnosis, age, employment status, things like that, or needs-based. A lot of times, I will say, with why I love this star so much is because a lot of times, even myself, before I learned about this tool, a lot of people jump straight to eligibility. What are things that I could, maybe through the county, or what are services and supports that I can get? What I love about this star is that it actually encourages even myself to think larger. Think outside of just eligibility, because there are things, there are people, there are strengths, right, to tap into. Community support. So these are basically, community supports are for anyone. Anyone can access them. So faith-based communities, YMCAs, libraries, parks, anything, public safety, right? So anything that doesn't require a membership, anyone can access them. Lastly is technology. We have seen how much technology can increase independence and just integration. And so the star is really encouraging people to think about how technology can be a support. So that can be personal technology, phones, tablets, anything, to adaptive equipment, to environmental technologies that help people access their environment. So the trajectory and this integrated support star is part of, like, for me, when I'm supporting parents advocating for their child, it's a foundational, like, advocacy toolkit. Like, that's not actually a thing, but that's how I think of it, is like foundational pieces for advocacy. The last one, and you might be familiar with this, is a one-page profile. So a one-page profile is so helpful. So when I was a special education teacher, I remember when we had substitutes, and a lot of the students that I worked with didn't use words to communicate, had higher health needs, and a lot of times the substitutes might have not worked with people with disabilities, and a lot of times they would go directly to me and they wouldn't really engage with my students or talk to them. And I didn't learn about a one-page profile until I started working at the ARC Minnesota, because it's so helpful to share critical information about your child with people. And so it can give people a snapshot of that critical information so they can get to know your child kind of like right off the bat. And I just wish I had this for people who are engaging with my students so that they would be able to say, oh, I know this about you, and they could ask questions rather than really not see them as someone with these things. So a one-page profile typically goes over these three components: what people like and admire about me, what's important to me, and how to best support me. So this is a really incredible tool to really give people that critical information. I've seen a lot of parents use this when they're trying to like cut through the jargon and deficit-based paperwork that's maybe in special education or healthcare settings, so that it's really person-centered and strength-based. So they'll ask people, can you read this first? Or have that in their file, in my chart. I want their one-page profile, so that they know how to communicate with my child, or they know their strengths, right? The other one I've really seen a lot of people use this for is around inclusion. So parents have used this to push for inclusion. So with a general education teacher, or even a group leader of like maybe a faith group or a community group, where maybe they aren't sure about how to support someone with a disability, but here is this information about how to support them. What do they like? What are their strengths? Who is this person, right? And it can give them this snapshot, and it can help them feel more comfortable to support a person. The ARC Minnesota, we also use this for staff, actually. We all fill out a one-page profile so we know how to support one another. So this is like one of my all-time favorite tools. I highly encourage using it. And you can, all of these tools you can just Google, like one-page profile. You know, all these things are, you can find them. Okay. All right, we're gonna go through a few additional tools that I chose because they have different settings that they're good for. What's working, what's not working is a person-centered tool to help people identify what are some positive aspects as well as the negative ones, to either discontinue the ones that are not working and move forward in a way that's gonna be more positive for the person. A lot of times parents will call with an issue, and I will use this tool to understand the issue before we go into problem-solving mode, and really understand what needs to change. So this can be around anything. Again, it can be big picture, like with all these tools, big picture or zoom in to your life. So what's working in life, or what's working in school, what's working in the healthcare, what's working with this doctor, and what's not working. If something's not working, then the question is, what do we need to change? What needs to happen here? And that's really where that role, like the advocacy, it can be really helpful to define these things. The next one is the donut. A lot of times parents will call having issues with possibly people that support their child, people in school, or maybe case managers, and a lot of times that's miscommunication and unmet expectations, really. I mean, a lot of times it's just there wasn't a conversation about it. And so the donut clarifies roles by telling you what are the core responsibilities, where someone can use judgment and creativity and what is not their responsibility, basically what falls out of their scope. And this can be just really helpful to clarify, especially if there is like, oh, this person isn't helping or this person isn't doing their job. That's a lot of times I'll hear that phrase, this person isn't doing their job. And so then I bring this tool and say, okay, so we could call a meeting and everyone can clarify what is their role, and maybe there are gaps. I think that's another really important thing about these tools is it might identify a gap or an imbalance. And so you could say, okay, who can take on this responsibility, or who do we need to pull in to make sure we have the supports that we need? The relationship map, I am very passionate about this one. Again, I talked kind of about that isolation piece that I see, but then the other aspect is in the ARC Minnesota, I used to do, we did future planning. So we were working with parents who are aging and planning for what will happen when they're no longer able to care for their child. And a lot of times the fear was their relationship map basically was empty. And there wasn't anyone who is able to step in as a successor or even just to have connections like we all need, right? And so a relationship map outlines who is in a person's life. You might see some that are just like circles, so who's in my intimate circle, who's the next circle out and out. But other relationship maps outline school, family, home and other paid supports, and friends and non-paid relationships. Doing these tools, like I said, can show an imbalance. Maybe someone only has paid professionals in their life, and maybe they need more friends, and maybe they need some other non-paid people in their life. So it can just really help clarify things and see where action might need to happen. The next is the communication chart. This one is really helpful. I use this a lot when people don't use words to communicate to clarify what what their communication is basically. So sometimes it can be used for behaviors or when people think there's a behavior, and it outlines at this time, when this happens, we think it means, and we need to do this. Sometimes the other one that I've used is just, when I do this, it means this, and I need people to respond there. So it could be for me like, when I'm really quiet, I need a snack, and I want someone to respond by giving me one. So, you could use kind of a communication chart for anyone, just because we all have those nonverbals. All right. We are running out of time, so I'm going to quickly go to organization and communication, just a few additional advocacy tips. Before I go into that, why I'm going over all these different tools is because it helps parents reflect, problem solve, and then share that information with possibly the people you're having an issue with, or just even yourself to kind of reflect and have it all planned out to help you communicate with the people in your life. So a few different organizational and communication tips. So organization, one thing that part of the future planning actually was working with parents to create what's called a care binder. And that is everything about your child in one place. That can include contact information, it can include daily routines, likes, preferences, medical information, and administrative paperwork. When with the binder, I always recommend parents always keep the original, never give people the original, that could become, but just always keep the original, and then sometimes it can be even helpful to document who you're giving copies to. The next one is an instructional guide on pictures or a video, or even of how you prefer people to care for your child with a loved one. And just having that in one place. A lot of times, again, I notice with parents, or parents have come to me with issues, and we work on this plan to make sure that the way that they want people to care for their child is communicated in a way that people are going to understand. So that could be just videos or pictures to help them do things correctly. The one thing I think about organization, I'll just say, with the parents that I'm working with is that a lot of times you're working with so many systems, healthcare, you're working with education, you're working with county, you're working with state, and it can be a lot. You're working with so many different things, and so having everything in one place can just save you a lot of time and also help with updating when information changes. The last is communication. So this organization in Minnesota, Piszar, taught me always, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. Always keep a paper trail. So one thing I always recommend to people is if you had a phone conversation with someone, follow up with an email. We talked on the phone and we discussed this, this, and that. And we decided that this is how we were gonna move forward. Thank you, but it's in paper. Because when you're on a phone call, that's not in writing. Even though something might have been decided, having a paper trail, having emails is really helpful in the case of an issue for advocating in the future. So really it's kind of a preventative measure. The other thing is a communication log. Parents that on our help desk, they are always like, I've talked to this person and this person. I've already reached out to this organization. And they're talking and advocating and just figuring so many different things out. The other recommendation I always give people is keep a communication log that documents who you talked to, what was it about, when did you talk to them, what was decided, and maybe if you had any action items. And when you talk to so many people, sometimes there's someone who's really helpful. And I recommend asking them, can I contact you directly? And ask them for their contact information if you can. Because finding an informative, helpful, and supportive person is sometimes rare. And so finding someone who's taking that time, ask if you can make that contact and then keep their contact information for the future so you can reach back out to them. That was so much information, and I really appreciate everyone sticking with me because it was just, a short amount of time. But advocacy is really just telling people about yourself, what you need and what you not need and deserve, really. What your kid deserves, and making sure that people are seeing them, seeing who they are. And so the tools that I shared today, I hope can really help you show people who your child is and help you communicate with the people in your life to make sure that they are also centering your child. My information is here, so feel free to, just because this was a quick turnaround, I would be happy to talk about any of the tools or just anything. I'm happy to support. So this is my phone number. It also receives text messages and my email, so you can reach out that way. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nora.
Oh, my water bottle. Sorry. Sorry, my water bottle.
Yeah, you don't want to lose that.
I don't want to lose that.
Well, now we're up to the last presentation, and it's a good one. So this is the parent panel, so you can all come up. Jami Rowe is going to talk about traveling with MWS. Heather and Sandor Piszar are going to talk about moving into adulthood, which is becoming bigger all the time. Don Shield is talking about communicating, and Al Triunfo is going to be talking about Matrix Portal and the patient registry.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jami, and my son Sandor is 12. So we got his diagnosis shortly before the Kansas City conference. So this is actually our third conference, and I'm just so excited to be here and see all of the new faces and see all of the faces that we feel like we've grown up with and have become part of our family. So I'm going to talk about travel. Travel is something that I love to do and was pretty much determined that we were going to continue doing, even if it was hard and difficult and the logistics didn't always play in our favor. Part of that might have been for the first 10 years of Xander's life, we were an active duty Air Force family. So we were kind of forced into traveling, even if we didn't intentionally do it. Anytime we wanted to see family, we had to travel. So it's something that's been part of our journey the whole time, and we've kind of grown up with and had to adapt to Xander's needs as well as the rest of the kids, because as you all know, no vacation goes as planned, right? Even with your typical kids. All right, so traveling with Mowat-Wilson syndrome. I'm going to be talking about logistics of traveling, barriers to traveling, being flexible, which is a big part of it, and the benefits that I see to traveling and why you should pursue it if it's not something that you do all the time with your family. All right, first of all, logistics. Well, as I said, we've traveled a lot. Xander's probably been to 42 states now. And then last year we decided to do an international trip with all 4 kids. Because he's 12, we're older, our parents are older. The physical demands of leaving Xander with a parent, which we don't really have anybody else that we would leave him with, for any period of time is just not feasible for us. So if we're gonna go somewhere, we're taking everybody. So we decided last April to go on an international trip, and we flew out and we did the Alps. We hit 5 countries, and it takes a lot of research, but it was something that we all felt was well worth it. So first of all, I want to say, when you're planning to travel, start small. Figure out what you want to do, what you and your family enjoy. If you're going to stay within a 100-mile radius, so that you have the option of getting home quickly if you need to. If you want to travel nationally, or if you want to travel internationally, it all depends on what you value in your family and what you want to see and what you want to experience and what you want to do. So first of all, you figure out where you want to go. Then when. I highly recommend traveling in the shoulder seasons. That's not summer when everybody else is traveling because the kids are out of school. It's not winter over Christmas break and Thanksgiving when everyone else is traveling. Things are a lot more expensive. Plane tickets are more expensive. Everything's more crowded. Think about what your child can handle, what the weather, the seasons, where you're going. If they don't like extreme heat, you aren't going to want to go, somewhere even in Europe in the middle of the summer. It's really hot. So I like traveling in the shoulder seasons. We went on our international trip in April. It was perfect. Everything was empty. You had like the 60-degree, 70-degree weather, and we had a lot more freedom, and everything, like I said, the plane tickets, the accommodations were so much more affordable. So if you're taking a large family, that's something you might want to consider if you can get the time off work or you can pull the kids out of school. We didn't have a lot of problems with it, and a lot of the teachers, even my oldest who was in 8th grade, said, go, learn. They didn't send much homework. It was pretty easy. And then think about how you're going to do this. Are you going to be flying? Are you going to take trains? Are you going to rent cars? Are you going to drive from your house? Like, these are all logistics that we just have to think about when you're planning. I mean, how much stuff do you have to take with you? All of us are different, and all of our kids have unique needs. And some kids require a lot more equipment and things to go. And other kids you can, pack a small bag for. But whatever you're going to be traveling, it's like, are you going to show up and need to take a train, but yet you have all these bags that you can't even get on the train? So you have to consider that. And then who's going to be going? Are you going to just take your family? Are you going to take a couple siblings? Are you going to take, a caregiver to go with you, a grandparent, someone who might be able to help out while you're out doing things that maybe your Mowat-Wilson child or family member can't do? So we just took us and our 4 kids, and this is a little bit about the challenges. So, of course, you have your medical supplies and equipment. So we had to take all the medications, obviously. But the rest of it, like the diapering needs and all of that, I mean, we bought it there. Obviously, in other countries, too, you can go into grocery stores and you can purchase the things that you need. So consider that. You don't have to haul all of the stuff with you that you're going to need for the whole time that you're gone. There's going to be places and there's going to be families in our own network that can help us out. Before we went to Switzerland, I contacted a family in Switzerland with a child with Mowat-Wilson syndrome. And you can ask questions about where should I go? What should I do? What's accessible? You know, we wanted to hike the Alps, and clearly that's not going to happen. We used to hike a lot with Xander when he was smaller, and I could put him in a backpack, and we even got the special needs backpacks that are going to go up to 150 pounds. But who here can hike a mountain with a kid that's this high on your back so that your weight's like this? I mean, when he hit about 80 pounds, that just was not safe for anyone anymore. So we had to find other ways around it. So we decided, well, we're still going to do all of these things. We just have to find a way to adapt them to our family. So we would take cable cars up to the top of the mountain and play on the playgrounds that they have up there. Or one resort we were at, well, this is Xander and my husband riding an alpine coaster. So he could still do that. He just had to be in one where we could sit with other people. Another challenge, as you can see in the family photo, Xander's very excited, but his little brother is not. So you're always going to have meltdowns, whether it's that kid or a different one. I mean, and this one, Xander's in Lauterbrunnen, which is like the Valley of 72 Waterfalls, and he decided he wasn't going to walk anymore. Well, when you're 100 pounds, your parents can't just pick you up and carry you, so my husband had to hike back down the valley to get the car. Well, I tried to get all 4 kids over to where the road was on the other side of the valley, but I mean, you just have to be flexible. Another thing, like I said, finances. That's a huge piece of any travel. I mean, if it's important to you, you try and work it in your budget, and then you try to find the best deals and ways to make it happen. I mean, if you really find that something that's important for your family, like I said, we traveled in a season where not very many people were traveling, and we were able to do a lot more than we would have been able to do had we done it in the middle of the summer. And then there's the limitations. The physical limitations, like I said, Xander gets tired, he wants to sit. We ended up doing this trip with just a wheelchair. So we didn't even have a stroller for the little one. We took a backpack and wore him if he got tired. But it was like we had to plan that into it. And then there's also the emotional limitations. I mean, everybody gets stressed out. Everybody gets tired after so many days on the road. And so a lot of that, I think, comes with flexibility. So when I travel, I try to kind of pick where we're going and where we're staying. And a lot of it has to do with finding accommodations where the accommodation itself is going to be part of the trip. Because I don't know if we're going to wake up that day and the kids are going to be so exhausted that we can't leave the Airbnb. And that's where we usually stay. I always try to book someplace with a washer and dryer because we all know, you know, you wake up and the sheets are wet, the clothes are wet, every meal is coated in food. That's not clothes you can pack. So trying to plan around that type of stuff where you have availability of laundry and you have a kitchen and you can go to the grocery store and you can cook food that your kids are used to eating, and a lot of times that will save you money in itself. And then also, this is like mapping out when we were traveling, the little suitcases, which are hard to see in like the darker blue, those were places where we were staying. So we ended up flying into Milan because that was by far the most affordable airport, which shocked me, but that's where we flew into. So we started in Italy, and then we kind of went up and around through Switzerland and Austria, and then we ended in Italy, and we went back to the airport. So we did like a big loop. But it was studying Google Maps, which I do for every single trip, finding really cool parks that we could get to. Or we went to like a wilderness park is what they called it. And that was something that was sort of like a zoo, but it was free, and there were playgrounds and woods, and just something that's low-key. Don't overschedule yourself. Don't buy tickets to things day after day after day, because you're going to have a day where everyone's exhausted, and you just need to hang out. So that's another thing. I always stress that. I try not to schedule anything that I don't have to buy tickets for a long ways in advance, because you never know. You wake up that day and that's not the day. We'll try it again tomorrow. So I would say the benefits to traveling is shared experiences with your whole family. Anytime I'm traveling and I've just got a kid or I feel bad that the other ones aren't there to experience it as well. And I feel like they're memories that you make that you're always going to have. Like, look how happy Sandor was. I told him, let's take a picture and send it to your teacher. And he got so excited that he wanted to smile and show his teacher what he was doing on the mountaintop. And this was at a playground that we ended up being able to drive to. This other picture that we took was, we had to hike around a lake, but it was a lake that our friends knew was doable with a stroller or with a wheelchair. So we were able to get around the lake with Sandor, even though he was tired and didn't feel like walking that day. We were able to do some of the things that we wanted to do. And I also kind of skipped over it, but I want to say too, like I was saying, you want to pick places that your family would love to just be at. So when we were in Switzerland, we got an Airbnb on a farm in the mountains. It had llamas and alpacas that the kids could feed, and they could take on walks, and they came over and brought them out, and Sandor got to pet them, and it was just really neat. And then we went to, if you look at Europe at all, they have things over there called the family resorts or kinder hotels, and they're basically all-inclusive resorts with childcare and kids clubs for all ages. And they took Sandor for short periods of time. They weren't willing to do diapering and things like that because that was something that he needed and they weren't comfortable with. But they would take him for up to an hour at a time, and then we would come back. So we had a little bit of a break too. And all your meals are included. They gave us golf carts to ride around town, so when he was tired, that was another option. So there's a lot of things like that that even leaving the States and going to do something else that you might not have thought about can be a lot more affordable because all of these things are included rather than having to go somewhere and then pay for all your meals or pay for every single experience that you do. So those are just things to keep in mind too. And finally, I might have been a little fast, sorry. But finally, I just wanted to say, don't wait for everything to be perfect before you decide to enjoy your life. There's never going to be a good time for us to take all of our kids and travel and have everything go perfectly because it won't. But you obviously all traveled here, so we all have some experiences with it. I'm just telling you that don't be afraid to plan trips and enjoy time with your kids and get them out, into the world, into the public. Let them see people, let people see them, and I just love the inclusion of all of it. And even when there's been disastrous times where I'm stuck with, my 3-year-old throwing a giant fit and I can't move Sandor, there's people who step forward and help you. There's always going to be people who step up and help you and want to be there for you. So don't be afraid. We all face challenges and have different obstacles to overcome, but it's my hope that you can take some of our family strategies and utilize those to take a leap out of your comfort zone and make new memories. So thank you.
Yeah, okay. Heather and I are going to talk about moving into adulthood. There's a broad array of families here. Our daughter Sarah is 21, but when we started this journey years ago, we found out she had Mount Wilson when she was 4. So we've been through this, and we see younger families, and we know it can be overwhelming, but you just take it a day at a time, and hopefully we can give you some tips that you can start planning as they get into adulthood. It's never too early to start planning, but it's also never too late, right? If you haven't done everything you feel you have to do, it's never too late to start. So first, I'd just like to...
I just wanted to add that this is just an overview, and for those of you parents with adults or going into adulthood that got to sit into Amy's session yesterday or even the chat this morning. It was really, really amazing. So we maybe missed some things that we learned here that we won't have in the PowerPoint, but hopefully you can get her flyer and just remember the resource group you have right here.
That's right. And this is very high level, limited time, and it's going to vary state to state and for everyone. But I just wanted to start by thanking the foundation. Everyone got this book in their goodie bag, and Heather and I met this author. Her daughter went to our daughter's school, and although this is specific for their circumstance, it does give a good overview on things you can do and tips.
So some of the things that Molly touches on in here are the importance of having a plan. So you're going to want to strategize ahead of time and applying for the different programs that you're going to want for, and that your child moving into adulthood is eligible for. And we suggest several of those. And so does Molly. So my tips to you are to keep good notes, to find allies in the system, and if it really is necessary, your senator's office can be really helpful. So in the case of notes, it took us a year to get Social Security, and I had a huge binder of every time I called, I kept that paper trail. In our Health and Human Services Department, someone who helped us in childhood, I still communicate with her, and we had a little hiccup a couple months ago. She is one of those people who was like, if you ever need me, and she immediately jumped on and took it all. I just had to sit back and say, hey, is that fixed? And it was. And then the senator's office, they were incredible. It was unfortunate that it had to come to that, but they stepped right in, got disclosures from us, and helped us finish the process.
Right, and all of this took time, and you built networks, and
Yes.
it just happens over time. The financials, obviously, good record keeping.
Staying on top of the limits that your child can have, and again, Molly addresses so all of that in her little booklet, because you don't want your child to have too many assets. So just paying attention, keeping your records. She presents a couple different types of accounts that are available, so look at what's available in your state and consider a special needs trust. That's another one that she recommends.
Right, so the trust is important, and then estate planning is important. We know it's expensive to get with an attorney, but it's really important to set up a plan, because if you don't have a plan set up, the state will be more than happy to take over the planning for you and take control of those assets, and that's nothing that anyone really wants for their special needs person. Whether it's a power of attorney or guardianship, there's pros and cons to each. It's important to get that set up, because as soon as your child turns 18, things can drastically change. Suddenly, doctors are no longer going to want to share medical information for you. Suddenly, state resources change from childhood to adulthood. There's a host of things you have to be ready for, and laying that groundwork ahead of time is critical, and having that guardianship or power of attorney is critically important, because we had one state agency, before Sarah had turned into 18-year-old adulthood status. Well, we may decide with Sarah that she wants to live in a group home. That's going to be up to Sarah and for us to decide. They literally said that to us. So if you don't have that guardianship or that power of attorney, you're going to have some state agency making calls that may not be best for your special needs person. So this is really important. Getting a state ID before they turn 18 just helps with that transition once they get to adulthood status. And registering to vote. They're individuals. Your special needs, Moat Wilson folks are individuals. You know them better than anyone. They do have that right to vote,
And
so it's important.
To not interrupt, sorry, but like Sarah gets a adaptive ballot, and we talk, and we, our kids, even though they don't all have a voice, they all communicate, and we just talk about things and make a decision, and then we scribble on the front of that envelope and drop it off. So that's her right, and we exercise it, and I would encourage you to do the same. Looking at all funding streams, everybody from our conversations have access to different resources in states and countries, but there's a list of some of them that we recommend. Applying for food assistance, I'll tell you what, when Sarah got finally through the process of Social Security and the senator's office called me and said, now make sure you do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, she just eats our food at home. And she said, but what if you die tomorrow? And that one was like a little bit of a gut punch. She's like, do it because you need everything in place for Sarah. She should be ready to go when you go. And so we did, and she has that. Keep your eyes and ears open for other opportunities. And this adds another layer of us having to read through emails and through newsletters that we get. But like Jen and I were talking, there was a newsletter that came out about a funding opportunity that we could apply for to attend a conference for your child's syndrome. So we could have applied for that to, subsidize your travel to something like this and to even bring your individuals. So there's opportunities, you just have to really keep those eyes and ears open. So our scenario, this is something Debbie asked us to talk about, where to live. And all of you will find that there's different options available and they're gonna vary. But for us, when Sarah was 21, it turned out that she had the opportunity to move into a place of her own. We talked to her about that. That was by all our estimations, she was fully on board for that. So she is living on her own now with 24/7 support, and it's actually working really amazing. It was probably hardest for me than it was for her. But that's what we did, and it's working great. But you may choose to have your family member live with you, live in a group home. Maybe there's other opportunities within your community that we don't even know about, but look at what your options are, assess and make decisions. And then having a community is super important. So what does that community look like and why is that important? There's Sarah's family. That's probably her natural supports, if you will. That's important. But beyond that, you can see there's a picture of Sarah with Sydney and Jen. Sarah and I with Sydney and Jen. And having friends is important to everyone. And so, of course, it's important to our loved ones. And Ellie's here. She and Sarah have gone on play dates before. It's just important. So the third picture is of Sarah. She was really blessed to have some wonderful aunties who threw her a housewarming party when she moved into her home. And that was our church family that just kind of came alongside of her and gave her, wasn't a bridal shower because that wasn't going to happen, but it was a housewarming party and they just filled her home. But there's other things that you can do to think about what does that community look like, giving them opportunities to gather and have play dates, or Sarah goes into the local Starbucks and gives the baristas fist bumps and they know her, and it's just they don't know her, but they recognize her. Yeah. This is, again, what we chose. That's Sarah's house and hanging out with Dad. We have supports coordinators who kind of oversee your services in Michigan, and so we just happened to have one that was on top of things, and we hit while the iron was hot and got everything set up, and we're super glad that we did. But I think it's important to also be creative and try to think outside the box and look for other opportunities that might be available in your state or your community.
Yeah, I mean, our situation was we were able to find a condo just 2 minutes from her house, and we were able to set up Sarah's bedroom, and it's identical to her bedroom at home, so it helped her transition, and she had her favorite things, and it was a very slow transitional time, and it helped her get comfortable with it, and she loves her home, and she loves her caregivers, and she comes and visits, and we go visit her, and we wanted to have a plan in place. We're not going to be here forever, and we wanted to have that plan that when we're gone, what is going to be Sarah's plan, and how can we make sure Sarah's cared for? And she has siblings, yes, and they're of course involved in her life, but they're going to be establishing lives of their own too. So we plotted this out, and that's what worked for us. Every family is different. But I think the key takeaway is it's important to have a plan. It's important to lay the groundwork so that you have control over what's best for your Mowat Wilson family member, so that they can be their best and live their best lives.
Mm-hmm. So we also wanted to touch on the value of shared information. In your goodie bag, there was a flyer for something called the Danny Plan. And that's something we just started utilizing, but really circles back to what if something happened to me? What would happen to all that information that I carry around in my brain and in copious notes all over my desk in an unorganized manner? Who's going to figure that all out? And so we found the Danny plan to be highly useful, a place where I could populate all of Sarah's information and share it easily. So you can see the pros and cons. The pros, I think, are that they forced me to get rid of the scraps and put it somewhere electronically, to get everything in one place. To be able to share it, I can go in and give, and I have permission to certain people to be collaborators, to add information, and then I can share that information with the whole team. I can give parts, like if I just want to share with the school, I can give that information to them. And then if I'm on the go and I need a document that I've stored in Sarah's Danny plan, like her guardianship paperwork or something like that, I can pull that up. The cons, I'm still in the middle of this part of the populating, getting all the stuff off my desk and into that electronic portal. It's time consuming, but it's a valuable use of that time, and there is a cost involved. And then I just wanted to say we're not affiliated with them, so it's no benefit to me to be sharing that information, but I even said, hey mom, because I have an elderly mom who has lots of information she needs to organize, you should do this. Like, I think it's a really useful tool and has a far-reaching opportunity. So this is the information you should have received in your booklet or in your goodie bag. And Joel, that's Joel and Danny. He is willing to do like one-on-ones with people or little Zooms if you want more information to help you get set up. And he's also offered everyone a 25% off for your first year. It's about $100 a year. And I found that to be a wise use of Sarah's money.
Yeah.
So in closing, where you are today, so for those of you who have littles and bigs, where you are today is not where you're going to be tomorrow. Most likely things are going to change.
Yeah.
Expect a lot for your loved one and help them get there. Remember your why. That's super important. Why are you doing this? And take a second. All of you did something amazing. I just want to say we're super glad to be with our Mowat-Wilson syndrome family. All of you did something amazing. You put your time and your resources into coming here because of someone you love. So look at someone else at the table right now and tell them, you are doing a good job. Because we don't get those... Good job. We do not have... we don't get that review from our boss who gives us a little review of our work, but you are doing a good job, and you need to tell yourself and have other people who tell you that.
Yeah.
This is hard. If you attended the self-care that Jackie shared, you need to take care of yourself because it's really hard to take care of someone else if you're not taking care of yourself.
Yep.
And the whole kind of sum is that the future is coming and it's going to get here really fast, so do the work.
Yep. Have
Unfortunately, that's the hard part. You got to
It
do
is.
the work.
We had a video. We're hoping the AV team.
Is there
can
sound?
run
Sound
this.
is important on this video. So this is Sarah and Sydney. The first time they got together after COVID, that went on for 15 minutes without stopping.
Thank you.
So hang in a little longer. We're almost there. So I just want to take a few minutes to talk a little bit more about about Matrix. You heard Dr. Adam talk a little bit about it yesterday. So on the first page that you go to on our website, you will see a link to Matrix. Matrix is a platform. We pay an annual fee to be part of it. So there's so many places that you can put data today. This is what we've chosen, And I think it offers us a lot of flexibility, and it'll actually offer some of the things that they were talking about in terms of being able to store information, so you have some options. So here's the first page you get to when you go to our website, and you can see right there, there's a click here to get to the Matrix portal and patient registry. So easy access. And to give you an idea about this platform, it's well used within the rare disease community. The gentleman that started this is actually a rare disease patient. He's an advocate. He's well known in the rare disease circles. And he now has, I think here it's saying, 82 groups and organizations that use this platform. So it's been well tested, it's IRB approved, and really offers some great features. So don't get bogged down and look at, oh my gosh, this is why I don't like these kinds of things, because there's so much information there. The point here is that there's a number of different things that this gives you access to. You can track medications, you can keep a journal, you can upload any records that you want. This is on a mobile phone, so if you need to get to a doctor quickly and you don't have the binder that I know a lot of you carry around, all of this information is right there on your phone. Within all of that, there's this one piece that now is where we house the patient registry. So the registry is just one part of what's available to you in the Matrix platform. Dr. Adam addressed this a little bit yesterday. What is a patient registry? It's really just a compilation of information. It's where we can put all the information that's demographic, that's symptoms, whatever information that's going to be helpful in terms of attracting researchers. And that's one of the big things why the registry is so important. If we're going to continue to interest researchers, having a database of information where they can look and see what kinds of patients we have in the portal with the information, it's so important. So it has great value as we look forward to research. A little history. So in February of 21, we launched a portion of Matrix, which is really just this patient caregiver platform where you could do journals, medication tracking, all of those kinds of things. We did not have the registry and that initial part of it. And then last year we added the registry piece to the whole Matrix platform. So where we are today with Matrix. So surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, we have over 120 caregivers that are registered on Matrix. Most of these, the great majority of these, signed up when we first introduced Matrix back in 21. A lot of you here may have registered on the portal. Now where we are is with those individuals, I need to ask that you update things, because when you originally signed up, there was no consent. This information was just for you. But now that we're moving to the portal, if you haven't signed on in a long time and you were one of those original individuals, if you go on there and log back in, you're going to see, please complete the consent forms. I wish I could tell you there was an easy way to do that. There's not. There's IRB, which is investigational review boards, that we have to be compliant, to have this registry compliant. So it's a little bit tedious to get started. You can do it in pieces. You don't have to do the whole thing. So don't let it be intimidating. If once you get past that, then you have access to all these different tools that you can use within there. So again, our ask, if you've previously signed up, go back in, update the information, complete the consent forms. If you've not ever registered on the Matrix portal, we ask you to do that. Please go in there and get registered. And for everyone, whether you signed up in the past or you're signing up for the first time, we want you to upload your genetic test results. That's kind of the first piece of this. As we move forward, we'll be having surveys. Yesterday, when we met with the Medical Advisory Board, Dr. Schreiber has some things that he wants to collect on the seizure side of things. So that will probably be our next survey, but we're trying to determine that from our Medical Advisory Board, what's the next big piece of information that we want to gather. So we'd really ask that you log in, get the consent stuff finished, and please upload your genetic test results. So just how you get there, again, this is the first page of the website. When you click on that, you'll get to this page, which says log in, and then you can see. If it's a first time here, you request access. If you've been there before, you just go to the login, and if you've forgotten your username or if you've forgotten your password, Dr. Adam hit me, Monday? So it happens, and we were able to get that information pretty quickly. So please do that. You can also watch a tutorial. If you can put up with listening to me for about 10 minutes, going through different screens, that's what the tutorial is, so I'll warn you. It's me going over a bunch of pages of the consent form and where to go and what to click. And then we have a pretty thorough FAQ page as well. So please do that. And if you get started, if you have questions, if you're like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck, just give me a call. Here's my contact information, my email address. We can walk through it together. Anything I can do to help you get to where that matrix platform is valuable to you and that we can get those genetic tests uploaded, that would be fantastic. So thank you very much. Don't want one of us to fall off the back here.
All right. It's good to be here in prime time. This is like the best session because everybody's lasered in and really focused. With my name's Don. Karen, my wife, is over there, and there's Elizabeth. With that, so we're just jumping in here. They asked us to sort of share. People were curious about Elizabeth and her signing. With that, so we just want a good afternoon. How are you? We're happy, to be meeting everyone. This is our first conference. Elizabeth, how old are you? Are you going to tell us? Yes, 19. We didn't have a diagnosis until she was 11. So there was, like many of you, she was our enigma. And this is sort of like the whole conference was like, I think of it as like a Venn diagram, like with the overlaps of what's going to work for each of our family members with that. And so maybe some of the signing would prove helpful for expressive communication. Let me start by saying I'm not fluent in ASL. Our friends in the deaf community would confirm that. Karen's a little bit better than I am. She's a little sharper with her signing, yes. I'm more likely to jump in and try and have a conversation with someone in the deaf community. But I'm best when it's just the weather or something fairly simple. We've learned along the way with Elizabeth with that. And I like I always say the foundation for my signing is food. And storybook animals. That's right, with that. And I was super excited. So we're going to teach you, we'll teach you a couple things. But I was so excited. The first story, Dr. Seuss, when I was able to do like a whole page where I was like, 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. I was like, hey! I was like, we did that together. So our signing just grew. We were very, very lucky with our hometown of Faribault, Minnesota. because the State Academy for the Deaf, MSAD, Minnesota State Academy for the Deaf, is in Faribault. It was established there over 100 years ago. And so there were all these wonderful resources and a community with lots of folks who signed. It also put us in a sad catch-22. One of the things, so we met, I think it was the kindergarten teacher or the kindergarten teacher, who was a CODA. So she talked, she heard, but she signed with the kids. We were like, yes, this will be perfect for Elizabeth. As she's, signing seems to be the way moving forward with her. And the state said, no, there has to be some hearing loss. She's not deaf. She may not attend. We were like, but the community we're in, there were still those resources. So there was one step forward, one step back. You know how it is to keep persevering. But I skipped a step. Really, it was with, we were lucky in her daycare, in her preschool. It was, what's the crib room? What was it? In the nursery where she was first in daycare. The director of the daycare was a former teacher at MSAD, and she signed and she signed with all the children in there. And so we were sort of like, was learning the sign of the day with that and moving forward. And that was, as we were, discovering that as she grew up that she was nonverbal, the signing was the one way that was really working well. For Elizabeth, the district and different things, devices, because she won't always be around people who sign. I know, but that's where she's making progress. They wanted her to use devices. That was not as successful for us because, and it was really her speech therapist sort of figured out she's very social, as you may have seen. And so she didn't want to go down to the device, through the device, back up. It was just right here with that. And so the ASL did work quite well. And talking with some of you, Frederica, you said for the German signing, it sounds like Matilda is her German sister and is signing with German sign. And it sounded like a pretty similar journey and story that Matilda's going through. So that was really exciting to learn with that. So she had the one sign, and it would grow to two sign sentences, three-word sentences, four-word sentences, and it's quite exciting as it's grown. We always want, and this is like with teaching too, you think, okay, they're going to start here and there's this straight linear path that they're just going to keep growing. But of course it's forward, a little bit back, but they keep improving. And that's certainly the way that it's been for with Elizabeth and for us for signing and developing. But the key was, I guess, that was we just kept going with it. It's really great now. There's all these wonderful online resources. Signing Savvy. I don't have a presentation or anything, but it's SAVVY, Signing Savvy. That's out of Michigan State. That's a very reliable one. I was just looking at it, though. It looks like there's a free version that's pretty small, and their subscription version has grown. But they are legitimate. But what I will do is talk to some of our colleagues who are ASL teachers and find out what are, solid sites for dictionaries, online dictionaries, because they have the video with the demo, and it's just really neat. There's a lot of good resources. One other thing that I think was that was really fun, Elizabeth, you like music and you like to dance, and we're looking forward to that later today. Yes, I'll try. We'll dance. So there are music videos where people are signing, but we have to. Some of those are not very accurate. But folks in the deaf community are very cautionary about those because anybody can upload things onto YouTube. with that. But some of them are quite good. But but signing to music was a lot of fun just within our household doing, because you like Katy Perry and the ubiquitous Taylor Swift with that. And so signing to some of those songs you're hearing over and over again, you can sort of figure out how to sign. But let me leave you with just, so it's sort of, I love you, but the more simple, so this is I and this is L, but this is I love you is an easy one that you can share with your loved one. And she will tell us that too with that. So we're happy to do more question and answer throughout the rest of the evening with that. But thank you.
Okay, unfortunately, because of the time, we don't really have time for a lot of question and answer, and I'm really sorry for that. But I would suggest that all of you, at dinner tonight, if you have questions for any of our panel up here, get together with them personally, exchange information, and do it, on a personal level, because I'm sure that they'd all love to help. I have a couple things that I just wanted to say before we go, before we leave today. When you guys signed up or when you checked in, those of you who had requested a special meal got a card with your special meal, on the back of it. Make sure when you come in for dinner tonight, please get here on time. Put your card on the table so that the servers know who has a special meal. Otherwise, you're going to get a regular meal. So I just wanted to say that real quick. And dinner starts at 6:30, so everybody be back here by 6:30. And I think that was everything. Yes? Yeah? Okay. Thank you, guys.